Hey everyone, I want to record this video because I'm getting spray foam insulation here in the shop tomorrow morning. It's currently about 1 o'clock in the morning, Thursday night. I took Friday off from work so I can be here to deal with this. I got a lot of work to do tomorrow because they're going to be spray foaming this building, walls, ceiling, and my machine shop over here. They're going to be spray foaming the ceiling in there, which means I have to take everything out of that building except for obviously the equipment, the big pieces of equipment. So come 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to start hauling everything out of there and start prepping for them to do the installation. But what I wanted to show you in here is very critical. If you have a building like this, you have to plan for the future, future as far as finishing. So I plan on putting paneling up on the wall. So I'm not going to get into the details of that. You'll see it. I'll create videos to show you that progress when the time comes. But what I wanted to show you is what's necessary to do to put paneling up on these walls. So, you know, the main part of the wall, it's easy. You just put everything horizontal. You cut it so that your centers drop on the post. You screw right into the post with self-drilling and tapping screws. Not an issue, okay? The problem is when you get to the corner. So in the corners, you just have one single tube. And especially if you spray foam, that tube's gonna be buried so that you can't even screw anything to it. So now you end up in a situation where the last set of screws is over here and then this part is just free floating in the air. And it's not good. So how you remedy that is you go get some 2x3s, and this, 2x3s are the cheapest form of lumber. I wouldn't get 2x4s, it's not necessary. You're gonna need a table saw for this because you gotta rip them down to 2 1/4. Okay, because that's what these tubes are, they're 2 1/4. So, and then you wanna put one on this side and one on this side. Okay, so that you have this nice crotch in here. And you may actually have to take one side and double it up to make it twice as thick. It depends on what you plan on doing for paneling. So like, let's say you were gonna just do drywall and you're using like a 1/2 inch drywall, then you can get away with this because you're gonna take one, you're gonna screw it into here, you're losing a 1/2 inch over your 1.5 inches. And then, but that's fine because you still have an inch to screw into here. So, if you're using OSB, very similar situation. But if you're using like a corrugated metal that has deep corrugations in it, that may become an issue because it may pop out so that you don't really have any meat when you push this panel over here to screw into that. So I am using corrugation on part of it, but the metal I'm using, it'll work out, and I'm not using enough of it for it to be a huge deal, and you'll see. So like I'm going 8 feet up. I'm not going all the way up, so it's not necessary for me to go above that. Above that is all going to be painted and insulated, obviously. So I'm not too terribly concerned with it. You got to put them on the sides of the doors. And if you plan on doing interior walls, you need to plan for that, and all that stuff needs to be done. So I plan on having one interior wall. And it's going to basically run on just this side of the crack all the way down. And that's why that 2x6 is in there. It's going all the way up to the peak. Okay. Basically, this bay here is going to turn into a paint booth. So I'm going to frame this all out. And because I'm framing it out, I have to be able to attach the framed wall to something. So this side I have a stud here that I can screw into, and it's not an issue. I had to pull out the angled bar so that I can deal with that, but that's fine. But now because the paint booth is going to be all metal siding in here, I needed to take my posts, my backer boards, whatever you want to call them, all the way up to the ceiling. Okay. This front wall where the door is, I'm just going to go up to the header. That should be fine. My concern is washing down the walls. I don't need to go that high in theory because the spray foam is going to seal it off, but I want to be able to come in here with a pressure washer and wash the walls off because this will also be an area for me to do sanding and grinding and the dirty work so it's not getting all over everything in the shop. And when I do need to paint in here, I can come in here with the pressure washer, spray everything down, and not have to worry about anything getting rotted or wet or anything like that because it's all metal. And I can squeegee the water right out the door, right? So anyways, you got to plan for that. If your wall is going to drop in an area where you don't have a metal stud, then you need to put some wood in there so that you have something to be able to screw the wall to. So that's what that is. And I simply just toe nailed the 2x6 down to the metal and up there, and I actually made it a very tight fit, so I had to hammer the board into place so it's not just kind of flopping around in there, so it's under a lot of tension. And it's kind of hard to tell, but there's a piece of 3/4 inch plywood between the board and the siding at the base and at the top, just to make sure that I'm equally spaced and as flush as possible to the tubing. It's not super necessary, but I just chose to do that. So you'll see how I finish this off, but I just wanted to show you guys that this blocking is necessary if you plan on doing siding. And you know, some people don't care, but I do. I want this to look really nice. I want to give a big shout out to Kyle & Son Spray Foam Insulation. This company was phenomenal to work with. I called them up, got a quote from them by sending them pictures and measurements of the space and everything. The communication was really good with them. They got me in quick and got the job done good. I was very happy with the quality of work. The gentleman here that you see, he's prepping and scraping foam. He was the one that I believe he's one of Kyle's sons, and he was my main contact while he was there. His co-worker is the one actually spraying the insulation in there. And I did want to touch on something. If you look at the peak of this building and you look along the seams, like in the corner of this particular image, you're going to see light coming in. And it's not that the building wasn't assembled correctly. It's just that it's sheet metal on sheet metal and you don't have sealed edges. So in my personal opinion, spray foam insulation is a 100% must expense if you want to get one of these buildings. Couple reasons to note why I also believe that to be the case. It has absolutely nothing to do with insulation. Is number one, they help to make the building stronger. Number two, with this type of metal roof, those screws that they use to install all the siding and the roofing have rubber washers. They're notorious for leaking over time. The washers break down, they shrink, crack, whatever, and then they start leaking. And if you don't have a closed cell insulation, that it's going to leak inside of your building. If you have a closed cell insulation, the closed cell insulation acts as a vapor barrier. It doesn't saturate full of water, and you know, it'll prevent that from becoming an issue later on down the road. So the other issue that is insulation related is that once that spray foam's in there, it's going to seal up all those gaps, and it's going to prevent bugs from getting in there. It's going to prevent drafts. It's really important. So while these guys were doing this, I was cleaning out the machine shop. Luckily, we had great weather. I pulled everything out into the driveway. Total disaster, stuff everywhere. But that's what had to be done. I didn't have anywhere to put this, and I knew that I was going to have to deal with this first thing in the morning. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning working off 3 hours of sleep, and I started pulling all this stuff out. The shop has never looked this clean ever to that point, which is embarrassing, but it's also awesome at the same time. If you look at the CNC plasma table, you'll see the foam strips that I have there sitting on the table. I'm using those as eave blockers. And what an eave blocker is where the ceiling meets the wall on the low side. In this particular building, there's a gap. And if you look at this image, you can see the foam between the roof rafters and the wall. right at the very top of the wall between the rafters. That's blocking off that cavity because it's huge and they won't be able to spray in there very well. So you just block it off with foam or anything really. And when they spray the insulation in there, it'll harden up and it'll seal off that area. And that's what you want. With spray foam insulation, you don't need to have a vented attic space. So that's why in this particular application, blocking off the eaves is appropriate. Basically, what you're trying to accomplish is to totally seal off the building and remove all drafts and all, for me, that is the most important thing. I'm still going to contend with the garage doors, but it is what it is. So here's the machine shop, fully insulated. It's not as pretty as the other building. Eventually, I'll get around to painting that ceiling black. But these guys had to work around a tremendous amount of stuff. All my equipment, lighting, and cords, and so on and so forth. And they did a really good job. Here's the final cleanup on the main building. They did a good job with cleaning up their mess. They didn't leave anything behind. All the plastic, everything was taken with them. They didn't just fill up my dumpster or anything like that. And yeah, here's the final product. One thing that I want to mention to you guys is that when you spray foam insulate any building, you really need to put some sort of coating over it, some sort of paint, or cover the building with panel, or cover the spray foam with paneling. I believe it's by code that you do one or the other. So the lower sections of my walls will be covered in paneling, and the very top portions and the ceiling will all be painted, and I'll show you guys that in a later video. So that's it for now. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for the support, and like always, subscribe, comment, and like. Thank you.